All right, what are you doing here today?
So we're at our client's property today, mostly taking care of the invasive plants that are present in our landscape, and we're really at this time of the year focusing on the mature woody species that are here. So that's buckthorn, that's bittersweet, that's burning bush, and Norway maples.
Okay, how are you dealing with them?
So in this case, at this time of the year, we're strictly doing cut and paint treatments. So we cut the plant down to the base of the plant, and then we're painting, daubing, dabbing herbicide on that stem.
Okay, and how late into the season can you do that?
So our window of treatment for cut and paints for most woody invasive species is essentially from June until February, and that tail end can be variable just based upon when the temperatures start coming up. So we want to avoid the spring sap flows, so if we have a slightly earlier spring because of mild winter, that's where that time frame might be compressed.
Okay, so any time until February, basically, June to February.
Until spring sap flows.
Sap. Okay.
So we use February as kind of that marker.
How do people know when that is?
Essentially, if you see any sort of buds on your forsythia, that's too late. So again, we look at it as a rough guideline, but if we understand that if we're having consistently high temperatures and 60-degree temperatures in January, that's where our time frame might be compressed.
Okay. What about what about snow on the ground? Can you move the snow aside and do that?
Yeah, so as long as the snow's not too deep, we don't really work in when we're having to traverse, foot deep snow. But if you just have a dusting on the ground, it doesn't impede any of the treatments.
Okay, so that's the treatment. Obviously you can do mechanical anytime.
Mechanical might be trickier if the ground's frozen because the roots will stay in the ground. So mostly mechanical happens while the ground is still workable, which could be as late as, December, depending upon the season.
Okay.
Again.
All right. And then exceptions to this in terms of things that that are not woody, but that you have to be careful of timing-wise?
Sure. The only exceptions I would say to our woody plant treatments typically fall within stuff like tree of heaven, where you're worrying about suckering, and evidence doesn't suggest that winter treatments are necessarily effective. So that's where we really look at the calendar that's outlined at I believe it's Penn State's guidelines of July through first week in October, typically. And then outside of that, anything that needs to be foliar treated, so that's knotweed, that's garlic mustard, that's in some cases black swallowwort, all those are really going to benefit from focusing in on when the plant material is actively growing, past its spring sap flow, and its leaves are treatable.
Great. What else should I know?
Basically, you just want to make sure that you're avoiding any spring sap flows for when you're doing your cut and paint treatments for woody plants. There's a narrow window of certain plants like garlic mustard where treating during the spring is more appropriate, but typically as a hard and fast rule, we look at June through the leaves to change color for foliar applications, and then till February for cut and paint applications.
What do you think are the most threatening invasive plants in this region?
Yeah, so it's kind of a two-stage question or answer. The plants that are threatening and also a pain in the butt to manage, I would put those as Japanese knotweed, tree of heaven, and black swallowwort. Those are highly dispersive, highly problematic in terms of disrupting the environment, and also very nuanced in how they need to be treated, or they require multiple applications to really get a handle on it. The other plants that are very problematic for the environment but are much more simple to manage and control and are very easy to control when using herbicides are things like Asiatic bittersweet and glossy buckthorn and burning bush. Those are all very simple to control plants. They just need to be done.
Yep, and you have all three of them here.
All three of those, yep.
Great.
So that's what we love to see in our winter work is plants that are going to really benefit from this control timing and really set us up for the next season to not have as much material to be managing, and we're just looking at mostly the seed bank that's present.
Yeah, I mean, and this is something that the average homeowner can take on.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's depending upon, like everything we're doing here only really requires an understanding of the plants that we're treating, the nuance of that, and really the muscle to actually do it. But in terms of a homeowner, is certainly possible to educate themselves on things like bittersweet and buckthorn, and especially when you're treating it with a cut stump treatment, those are all application techniques that are very, very safe for an individual to be able to apply themselves.
That's great. What about disposal, finally?
Yeah, so in terms of the material that's being cut out of the landscape, any berries that we have present, which at this point in the season we're just managing we're just managing burning bush. We're cutting those auxiliary stems out and bagging those and putting them in the trash, and then the main part of that brush is being sent to the landscape waste stream.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.